Hello everyone, this is Bart Kemp once again, episode 7, Uncle Malcolm's Archive, obviously Malcolm Blunt, and we just have another quick chat before Assassination weekend, and thought we'd talk some more about the FBI. We did talk about the record system as such, but I think we should talk about a few people. Robert Gamberling for starters. Malcolm, please tell us about Robert Gamberling of the FBI.
I met Robert Gamberlin on one occasion. It was an interesting few hours with him.
When was this?
This was, let me think, early 2000s, 2003, 2004, I think.
How did that happen?
I was with a very good researcher called Stan Clark, who was based in Nashville, but who had lived in Dallas for a number of years. And almost anybody, people in our research community would be interested in, Stan had contacts with. You could give him a name, he'd open his book, dial these people up, and they talk to you because Stan recommended that they talk to you. And Stan picked me up one day and he said, well, we go for a drive, and we ended up, I don't know where that, I think it was on Clemson Drive. But I still don't know where that is in Dallas, but it was called Clemson Drive. And there was a guy out the front of the house. It was obviously around November time, and he was sweeping up leaves and darting around here and there, full of energy. And Stan said, just rolled up on him and said, this guy's over from England, and any chance we can talk? And he said, oh yeah, fine. So he put the rake and the brush down, and we went inside. And I think what struck me about Robert Gamberlin at a personal level was his energy and drive. He was about 80 years old then, and this guy was like, wow, it was almost like he was on speed.
Maybe he was.
No, not on speed, but you know what I mean. It's like it's so much
Energy.
oomph.
Yeah.
It makes you look like a snail.
Me?
Yeah.
How dare you?
This guy was just like driven. Like, you know, we were going through, I remember we were talking about the message that came in, there was a message that came into the in-tray about Oswald on the 18th of November. And had a bit of a back and forward discussion on that, and he was just going from one side of his office to the other side of his office, into this drawer, out of that drawer, and he was just like a whirlwind. And his wife was, I remember his wife, Mrs. Gemberling, was over there just on the right, and I turned to her and I said, what must he have been like in 1963, 64? She said, he was really animated in 63, 64. She said that when the case broke, when the assassination broke, she never saw him for days on end, days and days and days. He used to come home every so often for a shower, change of clothes, and then back to work. It was just round the clock. He was working round the clock, day after day, week after week. Just tremendous energy. I could see why he would get to that position of being special agent in charge. He was that sort of guy. What struck me, talking away to him, and then I sort of looked to the right, and on the back of his office wall was a purple heart in a frame. And he saw me looking at it, and he said to me, "Oh, that was Iwo Jima." You know? So I said, "Oh God!" I said, "That was a real big hit for many Americans. A lot of people, and he said, yeah. He said, I don't know why they gave it to me. I didn't do anything. So that was a great line.
Wounded in combat, isn't it?
Yeah, he got wounded. He said, I never got out of the water. I never got out of the water.
So what did you talk
I
about?
thought
Like,
very, very self-deprecating guy. Yeah.
right. What was his thoughts on Oswald?
It's not on Oswald where he was. He was the guy that did it.
He was convinced of his guilt.
Yeah, absolutely convinced. That was it. It wasn't just like playing around in his mind, pretending. It was like a lot of these people. They're true believers. People are true believers. And I think we talked about there were many extra agents sent to Dallas for the investigation.
Yeah.
He said he thought it was about 100, and I think that's accurate. About 100 agents, and they were trying to work out where they were going to be. And some were placed in hotels, and some were in rooming houses, some were in apartments. And he was saying that they were all top, all top level FBI people. And interestingly, he said we even had people come down from the Washington Metropolitan Field Office, which, if you know anything about FBI, the Washington Metropolitan Field Office is probably the most definitely the most powerful field office in America, because it deals with all the very sensitive stuff, politically sensitive stuff, and if there's a problem, a lot of they get copied on a lot of things that are difficult to manage. So we talked about things like that, and the agents, and the sheer insanity of all the work, the effort of writing reports and then having to rewrite reports, and then just keeping this stuff going because of all the requests that were coming down from FBI headquarters for more and more and more and more and more. They needed it. Everything was on a deadline, and it struck me that from the human element you could see that. I could see that here was a guy that was, in a way, almost the perfect guy for Dallas, for that investigation. Someone like unlimited energy, unlimited drive, and able to organise things. So that was interesting for me. The human. I mean, obviously, I didn't get any great state secrets from him, but it was interesting to get the sense of how things were from his perspective, for the FBI.
What about what did he say about Hoover or others? Did he ever mention Shanklin or?
I don't think he mentioned much about Gordon Shanklin. J. Edgar Hoover was always referred to as Mr. Hoover. So you could see that there was, at least from his point of view, there was respect.
So and Hosty, because I mean my area of interest, of course, is Hosty and Book Out, and Hosty, of course, because of his large role before Oswald's capture and interrogation, and during and after. Very interesting person to read about. Had many things happening. There are fair bit of interviews. I mean, he did 3 days at the church committee. I don't think there's that many people that actually did 3 days of interviewing, which accumulates to, I think, about 500 pages at Mary Farrell. But also his notes himself, the folder that you had with all the notes, handwritten notes from either his notepad block or written on affidavit paper, or his reports as such with regard to Oswald, But then, of course, you got Bookhout as well, James Bookhout. Did he say anything about him? Nothing. Not important enough. Okay. Oh, that's quite interesting.
No, but I think, you know, in a way, it sort of jogs my memory to witnesses which were, you know, I mean, you're working on the early stuff, but I mean, there were people like, was it Henry McCluskey at the Texas Employment Commission?
TC, yeah.
Where this guy actually contradicted the actual story about Oswald and the timings and everything else. I think I was looking at it actually. I think I actually looked at it again. And it's the sort of thing really that it never gets looked at. When I look at it, I'm looking at it again, and that's right. He stated that the information he wished to convey was the fact that Oswald had come into the Texas Employment Commission in Dallas on September the 25th, 1963. McCluskey did not actually see Oswald, but Oswald was seen by Harry Sanderson, another claims clerk in the Dallas office. He further stated that Oswald did in fact present himself at the Dallas TEC on October the 3rd, and that he, McCluskey, saw him on that day. And then this is Albert Jenner, you know, the Warren Commission staffer.
No.
He goes on to say on page 2, McCluskey is greatly in error for several reasons. The only entry by Sanderson on the claim record card is one dated October 363, which records that on that date Oswald was in the TEC office and made an unemployment compensation claim. 2, the only entry on the card initialed by McCluskey is one dated October the 10th. 3, there is an entry dated September the 24th, 63, initialed by one JC, which records the fact of Oswald's weekly interstate claim. In other words, Oswald made his claim at the Louisiana Employment Security Office, and the claim was received in Dallas. So McCluskey's memory of this, which should be fairly accurate, and he's obviously talked to Sanderson, the guy he worked with. They're really working hard to discredit his statements. The Warren Commission, this guy's work, this guy's testimony just doesn't fit. So let's get rid of it. Let's deep six it. And these are areas which seldom they just don't get looked at deeply enough. I don't think. It's a bit like, you know, the Western Union stuff. Semmingson. That guy's testimony didn't fit, so they had to deep six that. They had to rubbish Semmingson. He was greatly in errors and made a mistake and all the rest of it. So, and the FBI worked very hard on that. I mean, I think I've got a Western Union file which you may have copied. I'm not sure. And
But it was
always interested me because that was modus operandi with contract agents. You know, they got payment. They were paid, picked up their money through Western Union. So if Oswald had been a contract agent for some agency, that's where he would have been paid, via Western Union.
I mean,
and Semmingson, of course, recalls Oswald collecting checks.
what I find amazing is that the feds was pretty much in charge of the investigating for the Warren Commission and supplied all the bits as such. But even though by doing that they get themselves into trouble because, well, what you just given me is a good example, for instance, yeah, because it does come out. And
well, it gets worse, you see, because you know, I know this is a difficult subject for Greg and other people. There was a person that worked at Tech called Laura Kittrell, you know.
Laura Kittrell, yeah.
Yeah, and she says that a lot of stuff, a lot of their records were disappeared over the weekend. You know, FBI took those records. And that's understandable because they took records everywhere, very fast. You know, they took the stuff quickly, really quickly.
Schools.
Yeah, schools, you know, you name it, everywhere. They just went everywhere and they took the stuff. Red Cross, Fort Worth Red Cross, took the records. Not only took the records at the Fort Worth Red Cross, they took all the index cards, they took everything. And then that stuff never made it to the Warren Commission. It was only when the House Select Committee were digging around that they found that the stuff had gone. And then, lo and behold, the FBI found it. They found the stuff, and they gave some of it to the House Select Committee, the Fort Worth Red Cross stuff. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot going. There's a lot of stuff that should be looked at. It doesn't get looked at really. You know, when you go back to Hosty and Bookout and those people, the other side of that coin is the actual places where they should have been investigating, and they weren't really investigating. They were just grabbing the stuff and then hiding them.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, it's not. I didn't know until I read Laura Kiltrell that Harlan Brown, who was an FBI agent, his wife, Mrs. Harlan Brown, worked at the tech. So that was an interesting internal bit going on there. So you see all that stuff and you wonder. They got in early, but still people remembered, even though the evidence had gone. The physical evidence had been taken by the FBI. Inside their heads, they still remembered, and they still tried to tell people. You know. But then, somewhere along the line, as you read in that McCluskey thing, documents were altered, evidence was altered to reflect what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So his memory was not good. His memory was probably 100%. It's the records that have been interfered with, you know, the records that have been changed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people underestimate the role of the FBI in this whole thing, of the largesse of the whole thing, actually, what they did and the amount, you know, you mentioned yourself, you sent 50 or 100 agents to Dallas and so forth. The power, I mean, you know, compared to local police force that works with, I don't know, 20, 30 people at the most on a case like that. But what they're able to actually to move ground as such much quicker than, say, the Dallas police. But at the same time, I'm also thinking about how much they directed the investigation by being like the sole supplier of information and requests and all that for the Warren Commission as such. And, you know...
Yeah, I mean, they depended heavily on the Warren Commission depended heavily on the FBI for much of their information, and that went through filters. Obviously, it went through filters. You know, when you see the people bitching about the fact that they couldn't get the Warren Commission staffers were complaining that they couldn't get information on Oswald's schooling. You know, they were getting interviews with school friends and stuff like that. They were getting it out of Life magazine and newspapers. They weren't getting it from the FBI. You know, which tells you something. They were really managing the investigation and filtering it. You could ask why they're filtering it. You know,
national security.
But the speed of everything as well, you know, I think what Peter said about the speed of where they seem to get there almost too early.
Yeah, it's especially with the school records. I've read a few bits myself about this, and it was just lightning fast of how actually these records were over the weekend all just disappeared and picked up and gone, basically. When other people inquired about it, no, they were here the same weekend and they picked it all up. And
It's just incredible. I mean, when the Office of Security Research Staff sent down one of their best agents to get school records, INS records, customs records, they got beat. This guy got beat everywhere by the FBI. He got there way ahead of the CIA guy.
It's almost like they knew where to go and where to grab it from.
You got
They
it.
didn't need to have any requests and say, can you get me those files?
No,
Can you
no,
find...
no,
No, we know the
no.
files are here, blah, blah, blah. Give them to us, we'll leave.
It means that an extensive file on Oswald prior to the assassination.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
I agree with you that if you can do it all this fast, I mean, even though you're a big organization, you got a lot of agents at your disposal, it's still quite fast, especially for that time of year. I mean, you know, I compare that with 9/11 and 9/11 in the evening. They had some things, but all they knew at that point was that the hotel rooms, and found out that they had shaven themselves and so forth. But that was about it, what they could talk about at that point in the evening as such. And then you see this happening, which is 50 years before, and it's too good. It's too organized. It's too perfect and too quick for my liking. But hey,
I mean, 5 days after this is like from the from the Dallas 89. This is from the New York field office, 8975 file, and it's interesting because they have a separate file on someone called Harvey Lee Oswald. So they have a different internal security file, a different counterintelligence file for Harvey Lee Oswald, which is 105-6163-, and that's quite interesting. I mean, some of the other files they had on Oswald, they had they were cross-referencing on the 27th. They were cross-referencing to 44-974. Well, that was Ruby's file. So, but they also had another file they were looking at, which is 105-38431, and that's a New York counterintelligence file, and then. Earlier one, which is again a 105 file, which is 105-35467, dating from Oswald's defection, 31st of October 59. This is all stuff we'd like to see, I think. Have you seen that one?
no. Walter Winchell. It's nice of them that they write the numbers down for the files. Gives people a lead to look for. I mean, there's one thing that, you know, I'm actually, every time I'm flabbergasted about how much there actually is. Even though there's lots destroyed and kept behind and this, that, and the other. Even though, with what they've given us, what's available, it's just the amount. Now, I think I remember I heard you say 300 boxes of material in NARA on FBI files, or was I wrong?
It goes way more.
Yeah?
Way more, yeah. I mean, we're talking in totality probably over 1,000 boxes.
Have you seen them all?
Yeah, I think I have.
Yeah,
You know,
good
but
run
you
at
can
it.
only, to do it in a very tight, organised way, like you and Joe Backus.
I'm not Joe Bags.
That's just impossible. It's just impossible. It's just impossible.
You need a team.
Yeah, you do. You need several people. Really.
I just want to point something out that's loosely related to this. But I said it to Peter, who's with us. I said, so I think I've done about 150,000 pages. If we assume that there's 7 million pages released so far, then we're just over 2% of your collection comprises just over 2% of what's at NARA. And I mean, I've been doing this project for 3 years now. Okay, so there was a bit of Harry Livingston stuff that I did for a few months, but overall, yeah, in Feb next year, it'll be like 3 years that I've worked with your material. And that just, 2%, 3 years, one person, so times 50, make it 100% then. That's 150 years.
Yeah, I mean...
Or you divide it by between...
Right, but,
even
it's taken a very broad sweep at what's available at NARA. It's I didn't just get into that bit or that bit. I just tried to take it right across the board, right from the first page of a finding aid to the last page of a finding aid, to go through it and then try and sort of section out bits that looked interesting. So it's not. There is a random element, but I suppose there is a bit of a system there. You're just trying to hopefully to stick on certain things that could be significant, And a lot of stuff, as I said to you before, you look at it and you think, well, that could be. It's not much interest to me now, but it could be of some interest to somebody in the future, or it could be something we could go back and look at in the future. That's why I've got the numbers on a lot of stuff, the file numbers on.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
I've had great insights.
Yeah. I mean, trying to find that stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think. Well, I hope people do get to Nara when eventually the place is open for business.
Yes, that's another thing. Yeah, just it's closed. I mean, they should open it. They should work with a skeleton crew of some sort. But okay, what can you tell me? I'm just going to throw a few names at you and then see what you say. FBI names as such. What you know. Or the investigate. Let's talk, for instance, about Ray Wannell. Who's Ray Wannell?
Ray Wannell was a senior FBI guy he was the liaison officer between FBI and NSA. So he was a guy that they worked with, NSA worked with, was responsible. And a lot of that stuff would be, intercept material, which some of which would be Soviet Russia stuff, could be suspected KGB people, all sorts.
He's also involved with John Martina. I've got a few files on that as well. COINTEL, Soviet Embassy, Lee Oswald, quite interesting subjects by itself already. What about our big friend, Warren DeBrueys? Yeah,
that's a big subject.
Yeah, that is a big subject, but just give me a few bullet points as to who and how and what.
Very, very, very clever guy that was able to wriggle out of being called to testify to the church committee.
How did he do that?
Because he was just very bright and very clever. The only place when you look at Warren DeBrueys' testimony to the church committee where he started to wobble was when Senator Schweiker brought up the subject of David Smith. And David Smith worked for U.S. Customs in New Orleans. And likely was utilised as a cutout by the agency, by CIA. In the dealings with Oswald in New Orleans. I think this is a great problem. They found this problem with Orestes Pena.
Yeah, that was my next follow-up question.
The guy that ran the Havana bar. I mean, they tried every which way to discredit that guy, you know. But he stuck to his story, and his story is rock solid. That whenever he saw Oswald in that summer of '63, whenever he saw Oswald, he was in the company of either INS people or US Customs people at the Customs House in New Orleans.
This is a really shadowy thing that we know about, yet at the same time, I mean, there are only snippets of this available, isn't there? I mean,
well, yeah, because all the INS stuff is gone missing.
Yeah, you've mentioned this. Yeah.
All that stuff is gone. You only find it in the footnotes of the drafts, where they give the page numbers. 36-page interview with an INS officer, 24-page, you know, it just goes on. These people came forward, they were interviewed, and their testimony is disappeared.
NBR.
I don't think it's NBR. I think it was Deep Sixth, you know, because you know their stuff just couldn't stand. It would have totally broken apart the case, the Oswald case, in too much exposure to what Oswald was actually up to in New Orleans and the people he was working with. I mean, it's bad enough when you look at. I tend to look at the CIA people that were down there. I mean, not just Joe Anides, who maintained a house in New Orleans in '63.
Yeah.
But other people, you know, heavy hitters like Carl Tretton, Margaret Forsyth, and Bill Kent in particular. I mean, these are big. What were they doing there? What were they doing down there? We still don't know. You know.
No, because it would
And
give
then
everything
we get all
away.
the funny business, you know, the leafleting, Oswald passing out the leaflets in front of the trade bar and all that stuff. There was definitely something going on.
Wasn't it William Kent who said that Oswald was a useful idiot?
That's right. Yeah.
Who got that? Was that you or doing a?
I got that from Gayton Fonzie.
Oh, he told it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That he got it from Bill Kent's daughter. So.
Yeah.
At just around Thanksgiving time, you know, meal, the subject of Oswald came up, and I think she said it was the one and only time he ever spoke about it. You know, just in that very short clip, you know, he was a useful idiot. Well, you know, what does that mean?
It means a lot to me. I mean, you know, I just find, you know, especially coming from someone of that caliber as such. Hold on. Can you just tell me a little bit more about the Pena thing and Warren DeBrueys? Because I mean, we just did it in a sense, because there's plenty of material.
Yeah, that's right.
on that.
Warren, certainly at some stage, I think Pena said he was threatened by DeBrueys, you know, around the time when of the Warren Commission, that if he said anything about their relationship, because he was an informant for DeBrueys, there's no question about that, you know, he was an informant, although DeBrueys always denied it. Deny, but Orestes Pena was an informant. And I think he said something, "I'll bust your ass," I think was a quote I read somewhere.
Yeah?
Yeah. So, and then Pena, of course, he tried, and I think he suffered, he was attacked, very physically attacked, a few times, not just once. So we're talking about harassment and stuff like that. But he kept the story. You know, I don't think he ever I don't think he ever went off. It was always the same stuff, and it always interested me that he testified to the House Select Committee, and it was around about 35, 36 pages, and that was suppressed for so long. You know, so I say suppressed, they would say redacted, and it wasn't until there was an enlightened archivist that came in to NARA, and I asked him if there was any chance, and he did. He phoned up, he called up, and they released it. That was year 2000, they released that. So that would have been, and that was Penya's testimony. And really, when you read that, the only thing that stands out is the fact that he says in that testimony that he always saw Oswald in the company of US Customs people or INS people, and usually at the Customs House in New Orleans. Well, what was he doing?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. What is the significance of that?
The significance of that really is when you think about modus operandi from CIA. Modus operandi is that the use co-opting customs people, co-opting INS people, which is what they did down in the Keys with Cesar Diosdado. They co-opted that guy. He was still paid by customs. To all intents and purposes, he was a US Customs officer. But then they did this complicated reimbursing of the salary. And really he was working for CIA, but visibly, you would still think he was a US Customs officer doing his daily task, but he was working for the agency. And I think that's what was, if you transplant the fact that was part of the agency modus operandi, it makes it very interesting with Oswald being in the company of INS people and customs people. And when we go back to the DeBrueys testimony, and that bit where he gets uncomfortable when you get to David Smith, US Customs. That's the bit, you see. Because these people were being utilised by the agency. I'm sure they were utilised by the agency.
Right. I just want to stay in New Orleans for a sec regarding with the FBI, and I want to talk about William Walter.
Oh,
the telex.
I've got that here.
Oh, good. Well, you gave me some files. One of them was a copy from memory from Walter regarding the telex that was sent.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a letter from his lawyer as well. It was about 3-4 bits, documents that were regarding it. But of course, it's always very interesting. Whether do you think the guy's for real?
Yes.
Okay, based on?
Based on looking at many documents. Based on people like Hugh Ainsworth jumping all over him. Well,
yeah, that's
Hugh Ainsworth jumps all over.
Yeah, that's already an indicator.
That's your credibility for that guy, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, he actually gets the opposite effect because it is Hugh Ainsworth. So
yeah.
Goddamn traitor.
Yeah, it's funny. I was looking at that because I lump William Walter together with other people, and I always call them the crying in the wilderness people. That's William Walter, Larry Huff, James Wilcott.
Wilcott.
These people that came forward, and their story didn't fit. The story didn't fit, so they had to be discredited.
Yeah, that seems to be a standard approach.
Yeah.
Discrediting people.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think. Did you have... I've obviously got Walter and his wife divorced, and then she remarried, and then they obviously interviewed, the House Select Committee interviewed his wife. Do you have that?
No.
Okay.
but I will.
Obviously, a lot of bitterness there, but you're welcome to that.
Oh, sorry.
And then this one is a more interesting one because it comes out of the Department of Justice, so they're really trying to hold the line against what William Watt was saying. So that's an interesting document.
But these aren't online. Do you mind checking on your phone, Pete? The riff numbers, just punch them in and it will say whether it's online or not. Okay, right, listen, why don't we move on, because the documentation I can reference to and the viewers can make up their minds about this themselves.
Okay.
I mean, unless you come across something, I'm more than willing to listen to it. What about William Sullivan? I mean, that's quite an interesting... I mean, there's quite a fair bit to read by him, because he's on the documents. But then, of course, that whole so-called death of him.
Yep. Mistaken for a deer. Yeah, right.
Suspicious or not?
A little bit. A little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
What can you tell me about William Sullivan?
He was Division 5 in the FBI, and he was quite a high flyer. But I mean, he was involved in quite a lot of the early stuff that came in on Oswald at a high level. It was being shunted around between Belmont, Tolson, Sullivan, Brannigan. It's a whole swathe of people there that were involved in the FBI at a high level at investigation. And Sullivan was a key part of that. But he was, later on, I think he was quite... I think there were concerns that he was a bit loose-lipped. You know, he was giving interviews and he was talking to people, and there were concerns. Obviously, there were concerns around. Plus, of course, you know the story that he took a lot of files home. Took a hell of a lot of stuff home.
What happened to that?
That's a good question. I mean, I think you must have some of that stuff, like the Robert Keach stuff.
Okay.
Where they went to his house at it was around obviously the latter part of the HSCA, 77, 78, something like that. 78, I think it was, that they went to Sullivan's house, and it was in the middle of winter and it was freezing cold. And when you read the documentation, it really looks like, because it was so cold, they didn't spend a lot of time there. Just routed through a few boxes and they went. So they didn't do a job. Didn't go through his stuff really well. And I often wondered what happened to those files, the Sullivan files. I mean, presumably he would, because they'd not been collected by the Bureau. So I just wonder what happened to that stuff. If anybody is watching this, whether they can tell me what happened to Sullivan's files,
Well,
Sullivan's papers.
if they know, please leave a comment underneath this video. I'd appreciate it. Any info.
Because he had a lot. There were many boxes in his garage. Yeah. Including a lot of stuff which was on Martin Luther King. A lot of stuff.
Okay, right. Next one, Vincent Drain.
Vincent Drain.
He
Not
was
much about Vincent Drain.
Wasn't he
apart from the
Hoover's
fact
favourite?
he was supposed to be one of J. Edgar Hoover's favourite agents, and seemed to have a good relationship with both ways between Vince Drain and Vince Drain, of course, was quite close to Hugh Ainsworth. So
Really?
yeah,
Well, yes, I know that because Ainsworth left notes for him.
sure.
But then there was a report where Ainsworth basically said, I didn't call him back, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. It was late, and, you know, it's just a bit of a contradiction and a denial about this whole thing as such in that particular document. I know of Drain, of course. He was present. There's film footage of Drain behind Henry Wade. You see, Drain didn't want to deal with Fritz. Drain said, I'll deal with Wade and I'll deal with Curry because they were above Fritz. So he didn't want to go through Fritz because, again, like I said earlier, Fritz was regarded as a pain in the neck by the FBI already back in 1945. Greg Parker dug this up the other day from the Mary Farrell side. There's 2 documents where Fritz is basically reported as being very uncooperative to the FBI as such, and that's 18 years before the assassination as such. So there's footage of Drain standing behind Wade, and the press asked for a press conference. This is just roughly about 11 o'clock in the evening, or half 11, and they asked to speak to Oswald and get, like, you know, this press conference, which is happening around midnight. And Drain is being filmed there. And then after the press conference, Drain is standing right behind Wade while Wade is giving his press conference at, I don't know, 12:30, something like that. So while Oswald's basically being taken back up after that super short...
What date are we talking about?
We're talking actually from 22 to November 23. That's what we're talking about, because Drain takes the evidence
That's exactly
on the plane.
what I was going to say to you.
And he goes on a...
Because he was the guy that was entrusted
Yeah.
with carrying the evidence.
Yeah.
And we know...
He went in a supersonic plane, the SR-71 or something like that. He went. I mean, you think like, well, he just gets a plane and just goes over there. No. He gets this Lockheed supersonic jet at his disposal and basically flies to Washington, just like that.
Well, Alexander called it the U-2, but I mean, the U-2 is a very slow plane.
Yeah, it's not that.
Not
It's that supersonic.
It's a military plane.
Yeah, it's that black long plane with 2 massive jet engines at the back. And it just looked spatial. It just looked like nothing else that was around for the average person to look at.
But the most important thing, obviously, for that police, he was entrusted to remove not just a few pieces of evidence,
no, the
but
core.
boxes and boxes and boxes.
Yeah,
of
they made that note. They said like they only took a few bits and that the rest was coming on the 26th, but it's not true. Oh. There's tons that went over there.
Cadigan testified to that fact. That they took it all. And he was a senior FBI lab guy.
Yeah. Now, I find Drain quite an interesting person because he just happens to stand every time where the command is. He's standing very close to these people, you know, and even during the press conference, he stands right next to bloody Henry Wade while he's talking to the crowd as such.
Well, I think this. He's obviously reporting back to FBI HQ.
Oh yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. Oh God, yeah. But it's just interesting seeing in the imagery just before the press conference, just after the press conference, and then after that, they take the rifle and. You have some footage as well. I don't think Drain is part of that group. I'm not sure. But yeah, and then I already went into the supersonic plane to go back to Washington with some of the evidence as such. The rifle tucked in the back of the plane. So...
Well, they got it all according to Cadigan because it all came in the early hours of the 23rd. And they were then pressurized to return it within 2 days to the Dallas Police Department.
Yes.
And that's why the stuff they couldn't get rid of the fingerprint ink. They didn't have time to do it. That's why it was such a lousy job. Because they couldn't de-silver it it all had to go back to be officially released, so to speak.
But the whole fingerprinting on the rifle is just I'll keep it tidy, a mess. You know, the whole thing, the evidence, the Carl Day saying he took the prints, then it goes to the FBI, they say there are no prints or not good enough quality and so forth. Then the rifle comes back. I don't know what to make of it. And then when they ask Day to make a statement on the oath, he refuses to do so. That's a giveaway for me as well. It's just like, yeah, come on, yeah, because I know you'd be perjuring yourself if you were doing that as such. Okay, this is my last question on this segment on the FBI. Regarding the records, because that's what we're doing here. We are nabbing and grabbing the records and releasing them as such. What are you going to keep on digging into FBI folders as you have been, or is it something like a chapter that you've closed off and say, I've done my bit? Look in the finders files of the ARB or the HSCA that
I would recommend that.
Yeah,
because the review board gave so many signposts for files, and then a lot of files. I think I gave it some to you last time. You know, what they call additional requests files, miscellaneous documents files. But there's a ton of stuff that came in, even before the review board. I think it was probably ordered to be released by the review board. The HSCA FBI subject files, which are terrific, a great resource. You know, people interested in Howard Hunt, you could go to HSCA FBI Howard Hunt files, Everett Howard Hunt files, and you can get, for instance, the full background check on Howard Hunt, which is about almost an inch of material, when he entered the White House, you know, to work in
the plumber.
The plumber.
As a plumber.
That's a plumber. So all that stuff, all that diggings there, you know, all the stuff they did on him, which is great. It's great stuff, you know. And I think did you have those photographs of Hunt? Like there was.
I did see them. I don't know if I've scanned them in yet, but I have. I did. You did show me something like that. Yeah, but it's a while back.
Yeah, I mean that was part of that report. So there's lots of stuff. Lots of stuff they got there. You can find in those HSCA FBI subject files. You just go through the list. It'll be in some of those finder's aids, or you can go online to NARA and find it. But some of those hard copy finding aids, they did change slightly over time. You go a couple of years and look and you think, oh, yeah, there's another three boxes, or there's another two, or there's one box less, stuff like that. Right. The one I found quite funny to deal with, it was difficult to deal with, was the HSCA security classified files, which are really interesting. And there seems to be, or there were two boxes of those security classified files which hadn't been released. The most you could get when I was there were 7 boxes, and there were actually 9. So that's stuff that we should be asking for, because that would be interesting material.
We really need to make a list of the things that need to be looked for, because that needs to be spread out. Because whenever then and say, well, I'll have a look at this, or I'll have a look at that, because then at least people know about that it exists and can be checked and traced.
But, what I'm interested in, obviously, some of the stuff is not on everybody's. I mean, that one I'd like to get released in full.
Restrictions on operational use of certain categories of individuals. September 4, 1973, from the DDO. DDO, yeah. Yeah.
You can see there's quite a few redactions.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, just a few.
Just a few, yeah.
Replaced by the number 99.
Yeah,
Let me
99.
just see this if I can, like that. I'll copy that. Alright, thank you very much, Malcolm Blunt. And hopefully till the next time for episode 8.
What could I talk about just before you close?
Okay.
Did I ever give that to you?
George Curry, Lewis Stokes, investigation of Oswald, Lee dormant Mexico City bank account. No, but I think David Joseph is going to be a happy bunny when I send this to him. And this is trip to Mexico, Oswald bank account. So that's 2 documents. Interesting. Never heard of it.
Okay.
But
That was one thing. That was one thing. And there's a. This is an interesting finding aid which probably needs to get out as well.
Okay.
Because,
well, last time I put some.
this is an internal one again.
Right.
An FBI internal one. Which is
So what the viewers should know is that in the description I link to some of the documents. I did it in the last film that I did, and this is also Mexico City related. George de Mohrenschildt, Ruth Payne. So I will, once I just scan these documents in, I will add them on so you can just look at them, and otherwise they will be buried in the rest with the rest of the material of the Malcolm Blunt archive. You figure it out. I only do scanning. So thanks a lot, and we'll speak soon, hopefully, for session number 8. And who knows what we're going to talk about then. And until then, sayonara.